Salad lock, Triumph outbound, permission to enter the lock.
Yeah, Triumph, come on in, we're ready for you, for port side.
Your attention in the large locks. Stand by your lines. The water level is changing.
The Lake Washington Ship Canal and the Hiram-Chittenden locks are really part of the fabric of Seattle. For as long as the maritime industry has been here, they've been an integral part of the community. We are the second most visited tourist attraction in Seattle, and across the nation, these are the busiest locks in terms of vessel transits.
The locks are emblematic of what Seattle is as a city. You have all of this diversity here at the locks, the different salmon that come through here, the different kinds of boats, the lovely gardens with plants from all over the world, and then of course the people from all over the United States and from all over the world. All of that really reflects the personality of Seattle.
The Lake Washington Ship Canal and the Hiram and Chittenden locks are important because of the navigation that we facilitate. The locks allow navigation from Lake Washington to Lake Union, to the Puget Sound, to the Pacific Ocean, to any seaport in the world. And that allows for a great variety of commercial activities, but also recreational activities. We've got kayaks, canoes, crab boats heading up to the Bering Sea, gravel barges delivering building materials to build the city of Seattle. And all of that's possible because of the lock's existence. But surprisingly enough, it was a long, hard-fought battle to get the locks constructed. It came in fits and starts, and a lot of people, I think, if you lived during that time period, would have lost hope that the locks would have ever been constructed.
In the mid-1850s, when Seattle was first being settled, the city wanted to grow, and there were lots of pioneers here who had great ideas, all kinds of crazy ideas, and most of them included the resources on the east side of Lake Washington, the coal, the timber, the gravel, everything that we needed to build a thriving city and to export to the region needed to come from there. They were looking for an easy way to get those resources from the east side out to saltwater so that they could sell those beyond the region and make Seattle a more important city on the West Coast. So in 1854, Thomas Mercer, at a July 4th picnic, stood up in front of the other Seattle pioneers and said what a lot of people had been thinking, that we will build a canal from this large lake, and he named it Lake Washington, through this lake, and we're going to call this Lake Union because it will unite Lake Washington with the saltwater of Salmon Bay. Everyone is excited. Yes, let's do this. Okay, but wait, how do we pay for this? Which route do we choose, really? Lots of different ideas were thrown out, lots of different starts were made over the next 50 years. So in 1860, Harvey Pike got tired of waiting and started digging a ditch all by himself with a pick and shovel between Lake Washington and Lake Union. Other people started to help, and after a few years, it was big enough to float logs between the lakes. Today it's much bigger, and we call it the Montlake Cut. And then in 1906, a gentleman named Hiram Chittenden came to town, a progressive engineer. He worked for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and he came to be the Seattle District Commander. And he set about creating his own Lake Washington Ship Canal system. But we have a small problem. Those lakes are higher than the saltwater. So how do you stop the water from running out? How do you connect those two levels? So Hiram Chittenden devised the plan to deepen Harvey Pike's ditch between Lake Washington and Lake Union, and he's going to lower Lake Washington, and he's going to raise Lake Union a little bit, and he's going to dig a cut between Lake Union and Salmon Bay, and then put in a set of locks. The locks are the keystone to Lake Washington Ship Canal. Without the locks, you couldn't have the canal.
The construction of the locks started in 1911, and it was a massive undertaking. There were about 300 men working right here at the locks. All the cement was mixed right here. 15 men had to man the big cement mixers, and there were rail lines that went down hauling the material back and forth into the locks. And then at the same time this was going on, the Corps was supervising the dredging of the canal itself, and that included digging the Fremont and Montlake cuts. And they had massive steam shovels and water cannons, and they were blasting through the earth and removed overall, and with the whole project, somewhere around 4 million cubic yards of dirt.
All of the materials taken out of the narrows here was actually put onto the ground here, and that's why we have these terrace slopes. When construction started here in 1911, it was actually Corps of Engineers employees. The Corps would hire people off the street, some skilled, some not skilled workers. And this was a huge source of employment for the next 3 or 4 years. Our first boat passed through here in February of 1916, and our official grand opening was July 4th, 1917. There were bands playing, there was a big parade of boats. One of Boeing's first airplanes was flying overhead, and an orator read aloud a telegram of congratulations from Teddy Roosevelt, who had built the Panama Canal. So this was a big day for Seattle, and it really kicked off the maritime activity that we still see today here. Over the years, countless, hundreds of thousands of vessels have passed through here, from tugboats to houseboats to Navy and Coast Guard vessels, log booms, even a floating dry dock that they wanted to place in Lake Union needed to come through the locks. Problem was, it was 1 foot too wide for our lock chamber. So what did we do? We tipped it on its side and floated it through the locks. So almost any vessel that you can think of either has or will pass through the locks. The buildings we have here on the grounds were designed by Carl Gould, who was a famous Seattle architect that designed things like the Sousa Library on the UW campus. The Corps hired him to design our concrete buildings to make a statement that we're a strong agency and we care about how we look.
Gould attended the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris, France. That actually became known for a particular architectural style, the Beaux-Arts style. The locks feature Carl F. Gould's design in many places, most of the original structures that you see. And there are a lot of original structures, and the small operating houses and their unique little domes, but most prominently in the administration buildings. It was intended to be the architectural focal point of the project. And so we put a lot of time and detail into that building, and it's well worth looking at in close detail as you come to the locks. The fish ladder is pretty cool in the sense that it was constructed concurrently with the locks. So that was very forward thinking at the time. Fish passage was not a concern for a lot of the dams that went up during that period, and then even 20 and 30 years later. But Hiram Chittenden, when he was specifying the design of the locks, that was one of the things that he was concerned about, and that's something that we're proud to say that was part of the lock design all the way from the beginning. 1976, we redesigned the fish ladder. It went from having 10 steps to having 21 steps now. Each one of those steps represents a foot in elevation rise from the low tide of Puget Sound. The fish ladder is always there to provide an ability for the fish to either move in or move out of the lake. And that's an important part of their life cycle, since they have to go from fresh water in the beginning of their life to salt water, and then back from the salt water to the freshwater to finally reproduce, spawn, and go on to the next generation of salmon. But also, we'll see some marine mammals in there too. We'll see river otters and beavers and mink and muskrat occasionally heading down through the fish ladder.
One of my most favorite things here is to watch kids get really excited about salmon. It's a very exciting thing to watch the salmon start their journey upstream. And instead of watching somebody throw the fish, you can go stand in the fish ladder viewing room and actually watch those fish swim upstream by themselves.
When people come here, I think the first thing that they're surprised at is that they see this amazing garden. There's 7 acres here, and it is the only botanical garden that the Corps has in the United States.
The Carlos English Jr. Botanical Gardens is very unique. The only reason why it's here is because of its founder, Carl S. English Jr., who was hired here back in 1931 as a gardener just to mow lawns. But he was a plant collector and he had a real passion for horticulture, so he just started planting stuff, you know, what he wanted to have here, and just sort of did it on his own. It was not part of his job description. And he collected plants on vacation trips he took with his wife Edith, and they went all over the western United States collecting native plants and seeds. He also traded seeds with botanical gardens all over the world, and that brought in plants from other countries. The palm trees we have here are originally from China, and they're some of the first palm trees in Seattle, and many of the palm trees that you see around Seattle are going to be from these trees. Carl worked here for over 40 years, and this was like his life's work, creating this garden.
We're one of the busiest locks in the world because of how many vessels that pass through here. And the biggest draw here is to be able to stand up close and personal to the boats. You can actually walk across the gates and stand around and watch vessels locking through up close and personal like that. This is one of the only places in the country you can do that. You don't just go up to dam number 12 on the Mississippi and go, yeah, we'd like to walk down to your locks. And they look at you like, what? No.
What the locks is just a big boat elevator. What we have is the chamber, a series of valves, and a gate on each end so the boats can get in and out. When we get boats in, we'll close the gates behind them, we'll open a valve out in the sound, and just like draining a bathtub, down the water goes. We only use gravity. When the boats come in, we all have our roles to play. When they come in, there's a director to tell them all where to go. The linemen take over from there. They tell them how to tie up and where to tie up to maximize space in the locks. And there's also the operator who controls the gates and the water level, and the lockmaster who watches everything and makes sure everything's safe and good to go.
There are all kinds of different interactions to have with the people on the boats who are coming through the locks. Everything from the routine guys who use the locks 4 times a day, every day, and have done so for 40 years. And then you get the new guys. There's a lot of those as well. First time out on the boat they just bought 2 days ago. You bring them in, you got to teach them a few things. Teach them a little bit of the lingo about boats, lines, cleats, just basic seamanship stuff. And then you help him out as he comes through. Give him a few tips, show him how he can be a better boater. Just make it easier for everybody.
Currently, there are about 45,000 boats a year that transit the locks. Our small lock passes 50 lockages per day in the summertime. 50 lockages a day is an enormous number for any project. Some projects don't pass 50 lockages in a month. The large lock only has about 10 lockages a day during the summer, but it is phenomenal in the number of boats it gets in there. They can easily put 100 boats in the large lock chamber on a sunny summer day, and it's quite a sight to see. The locks are 100 years old, and we have 100-year-old equipment that's starting to show its age. So over the next several years, the public should look for a lot of activity at the locks to upgrade equipment and the facility to move it into its 2nd century.
I think the lesson to be learned here is that you can take a 100-year-old project and you can invest in progressive engineering and in fixing things with that sustainable next 100-year mindset and really make it last the next 100 years.
What you can see here during the day is a culmination coming up on 100 years of a labor of love by a diverse group of individuals that keeps this child of Hiram Chittenden alive. From the lock wall section to the maintenance section to the engineering technicians to my fellow brother and sister park rangers and gardeners. The community is alive and well here, and the people of the city are counting on us to maintain the Hiram Chittenden locks and the Carl S. English Jr. Botanical Gardens well past 100 years.
The meaning of the locks for me, it's a positive reminder of what diligent work on the behalf of the government, the Corps of Engineers, for the people of the United States of America is capable of. When we put public investment into civil works, we can affect a century of positive change. I get excited when I see the locks to think about what they were capable of 100 years ago. and just what I should be doing and the rest of us should be trying to do. It's a positive reminder for me of what we can do today and what they were able to accomplish in the past.